Dave Kennedy is, I call him our keynote speaker. Dave comes every year to AIDE. We greatly appreciate his support. He is a rock star, in our world at least. He's the most huggy man I've ever met in my life, and a great guy. And thanks, Dave, for coming, and I'll let you talk about yourself.
Thank you very much.
All right, the part that you do good.
Well, first of all, thank you for AIDE for having me again. I think this is the third year that I've been here. Where'd that go? Oh, I must have done wrong with me. I just lost connection. I'm getting interesting cell reception stuff here. So first of all, I'd like to thank everybody for coming out and obviously having me back again for the third year in a row. I'm very fortunate to be the Chief Security Officer for Diebold Incorporated, which is a Fortune 1000 international company. We're in over 77 countries. We have 20,000 employees. And first thing that pops in people's minds are usually the voting machines, right? I can honestly say that we sold those off like 5 years ago, so we don't have any vested interest in them whatsoever. But I'm also the creator of the Social Engineer Toolkit, Fast Track, Artillery, a couple other open source tools. I'm the author of one of the #1 selling books in security, Metasploit the Penetration Tester's Guide. We wrote that about, a year ago or so, and it sold over 13,000 copies. Been translated in over 8 different languages, and really it's how to leverage Metasploit as a penetration tester and start to build methodologies around how you become a penetration tester. And one of the co-founders of DerbyCon here is Adrian and Martin. And I'm a host on the Social Engineer podcast and on the AIDE podcast as well. And so why I wanted to do this topic is, being in Diebold, we have our corporate security side of the house, right? So where we're actually protecting our organization, our enterprise, our infrastructure from attackers. We also have a wing of Diebold that actually goes out and consults and does penetration testing and things like that to customers. And what I noticed is the same techniques that we're using to break into customers now are the same techniques that we used to break into customers 5 years ago. And nothing's really changed. We have a lot more blinking lights. We have a lot more cool things that we've invested into to protect ourselves against these type of attacks. But ultimately, the attacks that we're actually doing against organizations haven't changed. And so I wanted to give a presentation around what truly matters to protect your organization. And what I see a lot of is people invest in all of these technologies to protect their organizations, and they're really not focusing on the basics of it, the simple things that attackers break into every single day. And I'll get into some of those. And so a little bit of the agenda. We'll cover a little bit about where security's at today, where security programs are typically focusing their efforts on, how we actually go and design a security program that can actually withstand these different types of attacks. And I'll be doing live hacking demos and demonstrations throughout all these. Those are the cool ones. And then lastly, I'll be talking about protecting what truly matters, which is what's important to your company. And so if you look at security today, there's a lot of different things out there that we try to focus ourselves on. And I always like the analogy, you can never really boil the ocean, right? You can't boil the ocean. Dave loves that acronym. But what we're seeing out there is we try to protect everything. We try to protect every single system. We try to protect our time systems. We try to protect everything from the inside. We have big data now where we're trying to get our hands around all this data that we have out there. We're trying to put all these different things into place to protect our organizations when we're really not even focusing on what's important. This type of mentality and security is fine if we're a 10-person shop. If we have 10 people and we have, say, 2 servers and a couple of other things, it's very easy to protect everything. When you start getting larger in nature, a 1,000-person shop, a 10,000-person shop, there's no way that you're going to be able to protect your organization entirely. It's not possible. You're not going to be able to say, hey, I can withstand an attack, and I know that every single one of my systems are secure. I know that there's no web application vulnerability in any of my applications, because the truth of the matter is, with enough time and effort, there's always a vulnerability or exposure in those applications. And so what we're seeing is a fundamental shift away from trying to protect everything to really trying to protect what really matters in the corporation. And just to give you a quick demo, this is a recent pen test we went on, and this is actually in one of the videos, but one of the tools that I wrote is called the Social Engineer Toolkit. And the toolkit's very effective in attacking organizations because it really bypasses firewalls, it bypasses web application firewalls, it bypasses antivirus, it bypasses host-based intrusion detection, it bypasses everything that we're told protects us because it's really tackling the human element. It's attacking you. So if I go up and I pick up my phone, I call the corporate directory, I find somebody in sales or I find somebody in the help desk and I claim to be somebody, and I say, hey, I need to go to this website, I'm so-and-so, I'm a salesperson in this group, I need you to go to this website to check it out. They're going to go to it, they're going to check it out to see what's actually going on with that website. So social engineering is a very, very easy way to get into organizations and actually go after them. And this is one of the ones that we were doing a penetration test recently, and this one actually doesn't need social engineering. This is actually a direct attack against a web application. And we found a 10-year-old vulnerability or 12-year-old vulnerability with SQL injection, which is pretty much prevalent on any organization that we go after. We find this every single time. It's very easy for us to break into web applications. And so with this one, it was kind of interesting. They had all of the latest and greatest tools and technologies out there. They had web application firewalls. They had, host-based intrusion prevention. They had egress filtering. All these things that were taught to protect us. And we wrote a quick, 30-minute thing that allowed us to gain access to the system unrestricted and fully compromising. And so this is part of the tool right here. And so it's a menu-driven tool. What we're going to do first is we're going to go into the social engineer toolkit menu, and we're going to go to the PowerShell attack vectors, which is number 10. And is anybody here familiar with PowerShell? Has anybody heard of PowerShell before? A few? PowerShell is a relatively new thing that was introduced into Windows a few years back, and it's trying to give the same type of functionality that you have in Linux with the command line. And so it's a very powerful interface where you have basically a full programming language at your disposal by actually typing it on the command line or actually running full programs in it. And with PowerShell, the introduction of that, it gave attackers a very large avenue to start bringing different attacks to the actual Windows operating system. And with PowerShell, there's a ton of different things you can do. You can build purely native reverse shells in PowerShell. You can build, bind shells. You can dump the entire SAM database, which contains all your passwords through PowerShell. You can do a lot of different types of cool things, and it's pretty much unrestricted. You have access to the entire .NET framework, so anything that you can do in C#.NET, you can do in PowerShell. You can do what's my favorite attack, which is what we call the alphanumeric shellcode attack. And with this attack, what's really neat about it is it enumerates some base addresses in memory, and it loads kernel 32.dll and a bunch of other stuff. And then what it does is it actually creates an interpreter for what we call alphanumeric shellcode. And what alphanumeric shellcode is it's purely ASCII characters that we can inject straight into memory without ever touching disk and never have to worry about triggering antivirus or things like that. So what we can do is we can actually compromise a server and never leave any remnants that were ever there, period, and shoot straight into memory and basically have full access to that machine without having to worry about it. And so here's an attack that we did a while ago. So I'm going to select this number 1, and we're going to have it connect back to us on port 443. And it's going to go through and generate all of its code. And Josh and I did a presentation 2 years ago at Black Hat and at DEF CON 19. I think 19? DEF CON 19? Or was it 18?
2 years ago,
18. So 2 years ago, it was DEF CON 18 and Black Hat. And what we did is we figured out a way of bypassing what's called the execution restriction policies on PowerShell. So by default, PowerShell has capabilities in it that protect against running full-fledged programs and applications. They're called execution restriction policies. And so execution restriction policies don't allow you to run these full applications that we'd be able to do here. Well, we found out by taking our application, converting it to Unicode, and then encoding it as base64, and then passing an encoded command parameter to the PowerShell interpreter, we're able to circumvent those execution restriction policies and actually use whatever we wanted to on the actual operating system. So we don't have to worry about the execution restriction policies anymore. So we can completely circumvent that part of it and gain access to the file system. And I just want to show you a quick example of it. We're going to target a 64-bit platform, and it's going to go ahead and generate everything for us. And what I want to show you is what this code actually looks like. So what this is here is all of our code. All right, this is, we're calling PowerShell, and here's our encoded command. It's a bunch of gobbledygook, right? It's just an encoded string that we're going to pass to the operating system to start executing all of our permissions. In this attack, we're going to actually go after a SQL injection vulnerability. So let's go to this website real quick. So this is just an example of a website, and I'm just going to throw this is some basic injection. We threw a single quote into the login parameter, which obviously things like this in the model aren't going to be out there, but SQL injection is. And with error handling turned off, we can see that we have an injection string within the login querying parameter or post parameter of that application. So we can actually go through and start attacking this application from a SQL injection perspective. And so I'll show you a quick script that we wrote. So this is Python. And what we do is we first import the HTTP lib, which is going to allow us to natively communicate via HTTP. And then we're going to initiate a connection to this IP address on this port. We're going to prep our headers, which is going to be our user agent string, whether or not we're using Internet Explorer, stuff like that. We're going to create our command here, which is our PowerShell command, which we're going to go ahead and run the command that you saw there before, which is the PowerShell encoded command that contains our alphanumeric shellcode interpreter. We're going to inject this command into Microsoft SQL, which is the XP command shell store procedure, which allows us to access into the underlying operating system. And then this is our actual data that we post to the website. This is when we hit the submit button, all the information that's sent there. And it's going to post all that data to that website there. So what you'll see very quickly, just by running this, and again, this is without touching disk. Oops. Watch how fast this goes. You ready? It didn't go fast at all. Hang on. Hang on. Let's try it again. My IP addresses, for some reason, in VMware have just been shifting around all over the place. Try this again. There we go. So we run the command, and then we get our stagers back, which are basically a Metasploit console. And it's getting caught up right now since I only had, since I just changed my IP address back. What we did is we launched a SQL injection attack towards the web application, and then called PowerShell to be able to bypass any type of restrictions we have, completely inject all of our shellcode into memory, and then have full access to the system. And what's important about that is that generally these type of attacks bypass anything that we're typically used to. Why it's not actually dropping the stager, I don't know. No, whatever. It's okay. So this is an easy example of things that we can find out there. And so statistically, looking at how we're doing, this is from Data Loss DB, which is a great website. Last year alone, we had 1,032 breaches. PrivacyRights.org reports a little bit more than that, so it's kind of a mix and match, but this is a good indicator. We're already up to 629 this year of public data breaches that have been exposed. And so you can see an elevation of attacks. And the reason being is it hasn't become more difficult for us to break into organizations. It's relatively pretty easy right now. Can anybody give me a statistic on how much illegal drug trafficking generates per year? That's cocaine, marijuana, things like that we shouldn't be having, pharmaceuticals, things like that. Anybody guess how much a year that is for the illegal drug trafficking? 30 billion? That's one guess. Anybody else? That's it?
Something's wrong.
That's not. Of course, you're not gonna.
Oh, I meant 300.
372 billion, right, of last year alone. So 372 billion in illegal drug trafficking in 2012 or 2011. Anybody guess how much internet fraud and breaches came last year, money-wise? Number? 0? 627 billion.
Wow.
It's better for me to be a hacker than it is a drug dealer on the streets. It's safer too, right? I can steal your money, steal your data, steal things that I can sell, and they can't track you, and you're fine.
What's the packet in your buttocks?
Why be a drug dealer today? Just learn how to hack and then go for it, right? So it's been more beneficial for me to break in, steal a bunch of stuff, and do that type of stuff. So if you look at analysis of breaches and what we've seen today, we take the Verizon data breach report, which is a well-known report, and I'm on both ends of that. If you look at how they actually accumulate the the statistics for these, there's things that Verizon, it's only things that Verizon sees. So things that they are on active engagements on, and then they do analysis of those breaches, and they go from there. If you look at that, 98% stem from external agents, i.e. people from the outside of the company doing something to the company to break into them in some sort of fashion that caused the breach. 81% of them use some sort of form of hacking, so 81% of your risk factor comes from hacking, right? 96% of them were not highly difficult. 96% were not highly difficult. If you start doing analysis of them, SQL injection, default passwords, patching, these things that we're totally not used to as security guys, right? We've never heard these before. These are the foundation of what we're supposed to be doing, and yet 96% of our breaches come from those. 92% of incidents were discovered by third party, and 97% of the breaches were avoidable through simple or intermediate controls. Simple controls. Simple. I don't even need to use these crazy PowerShell attacks. I don't need to. Still use the same stuff that we did 10 years ago. So it's the basic attacks that are crippling our organizations today. Basic. Period. And so what do we do in the industry when we're confronted with basic things that we're supposed to fix? What do we do as an industry when we should be changing default passwords or patching our systems or looking through code to see if there's any vulnerabilities or all that stuff that actually requires work? What do we do?
You throw money at it.
We throw money at it, absolutely.
We get a blinky box.
You get a blinky box, right? We go out and we buy NAC. We go buy a web application firewall. We go buy GRC, we buy APT prevention, we buy DLP. We buy all these things to fix our laziness in the industry because we don't want to go and do work. We don't want to sit there and scope through a very tedious process of learning what all of our external exposures are and manually going through things to find out what those are. It just takes too much time and effort. We're like the only industry that I know that doesn't work. We just buy boxes. It's awesome. I love this job. So this is something that we did, what was it, 3-4 weeks ago? It was actually probably more like 2 months ago. And so we were doing a penetration test for this large company, retailer, and they had everything you can possibly imagine. I mean, like they bought everything. Like you saw their server racks, and like there's like a row of server racks of just like security gear. So like every box you can buy, like APT Preventer 5000, DLP, right? HIPS, NIPS, NAC, everything. Like these things have the coolest toys and boxes I've ever seen in my life. Like I took pictures because the boxes were so pristine. Like they have someone that goes in there and cleans them every day. Like it's amazing, right? And so we'll go back into set. Hopefully it works this time. So I'm still at 153. Let me just pull a new address out so I don't mess up this time. If for some reason it just keeps switching to me for some reason. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to launch set. And this is a new attack that I released in the newest version. And it's something that took me 3 hours to write. All right? And I just wanted to make sure that I didn't run into any of their APT 5000 boxes. So I spent 3 hours writing a quick backdoor that I knew wouldn't get picked up by any antivirus. What was unique about this one is it communicates completely natively over HTTP. It piggybacks the proxy settings on the victim's machine. And so I inject myself into memory, right? And I touch that person's computer, I inject into their proxy settings, and then I communicate natively over HTTP. And all the information that I'm exfiltrating out of the company is all AES encrypted. Okay, so AES 256 encrypted. And it took me 3 hours to write that, right? So let's go show you a quick example. And so I'm going to do the website attack vector, and this is one that I showed last year, but there's been quite a few changes to it since then. I'll show it to you here in a second. We'll go ahead and clone Gmail. In this specific case, we walked into a store, and we asked for 2 of the employees' names, and they gave it to us. And I called up the employee index, and I connected to be one of the retail people in the stores. And I called up somebody on the phone. I said, hey, I'm at the retail store. I'm trying to get to this website. I registered the domain name that had a name in it. But it was like a retail website, so it was all fake and all that good stuff. They went to the website, and they got something like this. Let me show it to you. We're going to do the HTTP reverse shell. So we have our listener up, and so we have a box on the internet that's sitting there waiting for calls and connections, right? And then we're going to call somebody up on the phone, and we're going to say, hey, I can't get to this website. It's important for me as a person in this retail store to get to it for a customer, blah, blah, blah. They go to it, we click on something, and it hacks their computer, and it starts to exfiltrate data out. This is a Windows 7, fully patched and all that good stuff, right? the AV and yada yada. Give it a second. I'm getting strange internet things here. That's why I'm struggling here. Hang on. There. Let me try recloning the website one more time. Give it a second. We'll just launch all this stuff again real quick. Once we have the website, we'll be all set in here. There we go. So we'll go to the website again. Hopefully this time works around. There we go. So we get this website that pops up, and it looks every way in shape or form as Gmail, right? And I can go on any website you want to. And what that does is it will go out to any website you want. It grabs an exact duplicate of that website. It brings it back. It rewrites a bunch of malicious stuff, and then it serves it up as its own website. So you can clone any website you want to, make it look malicious in nature, and it's all within a couple seconds that you saw here. Now what's cool about this one is the name of this applet is Secure Java Applet. You can name it whatever you want to. I can name this Google Trusted Applet or whatever I'm attacking, right? And you can see here the publisher is verified publisher. And if you notice, it's a legitimate, signed, verified Java applet. I mean, a certificate of authority had to verify this to make sure that it was a legitimate applet. And so since it is a legitimate applet, it automatically defaults to always trust content from this publisher, which is great for us, right? Because we can just hack them over and over and over again. But what was nice about this is I just registered a company in the state of Ohio called Verified Publisher, LLC, and bought, $50, and then I went and bought a code signing certificate for $300. So $350 later, I have a fully fledged, code signing certificate that's malicious in nature for $350. And look at the reward, right? The $627 billion of reward, right? If I go into a company, I steal, $5 million, pretty good return on investment for spending $350. And as soon as I hit run on this, it's going to compromise the computer. Now, interesting enough, I actually changed the name to Verified Publisher without the LLC, so you wouldn't see the LLC there anymore. I just haven't reissued the code signing certificate because it's a pain in the butt. So you hit run. It goes and it runs all of its bad code and everything. And then what happens is when I detect over here that I have my shell, that I've gotten full access to your computer, it redirects the victim back to the legitimate Gmail site or whatever site you cloned, so they don't know that they're at a malicious spot ever. So it's pretty hidden in nature. And so if you see here, this is running purely over HTTP. So when I do an IP config or net user, I have full access to a person's machine. I can start downloading information. I can VPN into this infrastructure and start using this as a leapfrog into the rest of the organization. And all the communications are going to be fully encrypted, nothing that you can do to grab it. And I even, on this one, I did a little bit more. I took the AS encrypted blob, so this looks like just a bunch of random garbage, right? I base64 encoded it, and then I ASCII encoded it, so it makes it look like legitimate data, and then I split it up in chunks. So when it's going over the network, you don't see anything unusual when it's, the information is actually being exfiltrated out. And it took like another 30 minutes to write. What was fun about that is if you actually I don't know what's funny about that actual attack is, it bypassed all their technologies in 3 hours, and you can see the look of like paleness on their faces as I presented it to them, and they'd forgotten the basics, training your users. And the spear phishing attack that we used and the attack that we used on the phone wasn't very sophisticated. It took about 5 minutes to go and do it. I mean, if I'm going to go and attack a company, I'll usually spend like half a day actually becoming the person, assuming them, the roles, how they talk, how they communicate, call from inside of the company. I didn't do any of that. A lot of things could have been prevented just by actually teaching the users. And obviously 0 out of 43 antivirus vendors picked it up, right? So I removed the hashes and all that because usually antivirus vendors are in the audience, and so they like call people up and write signatures for it afterwards. So But 0 out of 43 actually picked up the actual back door itself and was able to successfully gain access to the rest of the company. Another example, this is something that we got to do with Rob here and Josh. This is what we did at DEF CON last year, DEF CON 20. And what we did is we noticed that a lot of people, a lot of organizations, businesses, homes have security systems, right? They have home automation. Many heard of like Crestron or Lutron or Z-Wave or Insteon or X10, all those. Those are all different types of protocols and companies that use these different types of home automation. Does anybody have a home security system? It uses X10, period. It may use Z-Wave now, the newer ones I guess are starting to use Z-Wave, but it's going to use X10. And so Rob and I and Josh and a few other folks, we got together and said, hey, let's hack X10, it'll be fun. And so what happens with X10 is these home alarm panels or business panels or whatever, they transmit information over power lines. So they communicate and piggyback the power lines to actually communicate with each other. So you see like a motion sensor on the top of the ceiling, right? What happens when you walk past it is you see that little red light turn on. It's actually activating, saying someone's in front of you. It sends a signal through the power lines to the actual receiver that's the home security system, and if the home security system's deactivated, it doesn't go off. So it says, no, I'm not activated, it's fine, people can be in here right now, right? Same thing for, anything that you have up there. It's going to communicate over those power lines. Crestron, Lutron, the lights, all those different type of things, they all communicate over power lines. So what we did is we bought these quick devices here. They're like $50 off of Amazon. And these are X10 communicators. They communicate over X10. And so this is Rob getting all geeky. And this is an Arduino-based controller right here. We're hooking up a bunch of things to this to start to be able to communicate over power lines. Start to actually communicate and send signals over power lines to see if we can start intercepting and looking at it. So we started looking at the different types of information out there. And then after Rob, I think, fried 2 or 3 Tinsy boards, set things on fire and a bunch of other things, we came to this thing right here. This is what we call the blackout device. And what this is a combination of what we call a Tinsy device, which is a small microcontroller, Arduino programming language, and a couple of other boards that we use to actually communicate over power lines. And so what we can do is we can walk up to somebody's back house, right? And everybody has a external power jack on the outside of the house, right? For spring or lawn mowers or something, electric things that you would use, right? So everybody has those. You plug it into the house, and what it'll do is it'll sit there and it'll listen on the network to see what type of devices you have. So say you walk in front of a motion sensor. It'll say a motion sensor trigger over here, and this is the product that it uses. So you can actually see where in a house a person is or a business, where they are. You can see what type of devices they have, all that good stuff. And what's really cool, some of the recent stuff we did is we built a cell phone into this. And so we can actually send commands back and forth to it. And so it'll actually send us text messages saying, hey, this is all the devices that are on the network to our phones. And then we can say blackout. And then it sends a jamming signal throughout the whole house. And so when we open that door, no alarm. Easy, right? Or we open up in that business, easy, no alarm. And so we use these on pen tests a lot of times when we see certain types of alarm systems that are using X10 to be able to communicate off of. But that was a fun one that we did last year. Completely derail this topic real quick to cloud strategy, which, has anybody here heard of the cloud yet?
Yay, cloud.
Right?
To the cloud.
Have we? Have we heard of the cloud? The reason why I touched on this really quick is I'd like to outline where we're moving to as far as IT, right, or the business or whatever we're here. I have a tough time buying off on this. And the reason being is we're moving infrastructure and data to a third party, right? So think about a castle mentality, which we don't really have a castle mentality right now anyway. But you have this heavily fortified walls and doors and moats and everything, and then you take all of your peasants, the people that help you every day, and you move them out to somewhere that's completely unprotected, that you hope has the same type of castle and heavily fortified walls and moats that you do. And so that's where we're moving all our data to. This is a fun one right here. Has anybody ever read licensing terms for any cloud providers? Anybody actually read through them? So and its subsidiaries and its licensors do not warrant that the content is accurate, reliable, or correct, that the service will meet your requirements, that the service will be available at any particular time or location, uninterrupted or secure, that any defects or errors will be corrected, or that the service is free of viruses or any other harmful components. Any content downloaded or otherwise obtained through this use of service is downloaded at your own risk, and you will be solely responsible for any damages, computer system, or loss of it, right? So that's where we're moving our data to right now, which is kind of cool. So that's where we're putting our PHI, that's where we're putting all of our PCI data, that's where we're putting our intellectual property and trade secrets. That's where we're doing online social media for businesses, where we're talking about our future projections or our future schematics and prototypes that we're doing for our companies. That's where we're moving to. It's awesome. Yeah.
You got that battery?
No, I think I got it. It's good. I put them in backwards. So this is kind of a neat statistic from Security Week. Companies are actually worried about this stuff, but yet we're still moving to it. At least that's what we're led to believe, right? 5,300 companies were surveyed globally. 82% of businesses worry about the security in the cloud. 78% of them worry about the performance. 76% are concerned with compliance, which is kind of an interesting statistic. Has anybody seen this one before? This is my favorite. This is my personal favorite of all time with the cloud. Anybody seen this one?
Yeah.
So this is when the AWS infrastructure, the largest cloud provider in the world, the guys that have it down pat, had a huge outage last year. And so the title of this is, "Life of Our Patients is at Stake. I'm desperately asking you for contact." Sorry, I could not get through in any other way. We are a monitoring company and are monitoring hundreds of cardiac patients at home. We are unable to see their ECG signals since the 21st of April. Could you please contact us? Right.
This is a hospital, right?
It's hospital, yeah.
Outsourced to the cloud?
Outsource to cloud. So clearing the air. There is no transferring of risk in the cloud. All right, you assume the liability and exposure. I have not seen one cloud provider that accepts the risk. Not one. If you guys have one, let me know, because I'll move everybody to them because it's all good, right? I have not seen one cloud provider that will accept the risk. In addition, how are they going to protect you against your brand and reputational damage? They can't, right? Who knows how much your brand can be impacted by it? Who knows if it will at all? Cyber liability, same thing. Can't transfer risk, right, of your brand reputational damage. You lose the ability to actively control and protect the information, the systems you monitor, if your company's now gone. If a breach occurs, again, you're on your own. It's your own fault for putting it there. So, I talked a little bit about the issues that we see, right? Things are not going so good right now, at least, for what we're doing. It's very easy for hackers to break in and da-da-da-da-da. But really, how do you go about fixing it? And that's, I see a lot of presentations in the industry that talk a lot about the issues that we have, but don't tell you how to fix it. So there's things that you can actually do out there to fix what we're seeing out there, and it just requires hard work. Here's some of the easiest, and this is the easiest way I can prioritize for everybody out there without knowing your environments. But I'm not really proud of this slide because I don't do like pretty graphics or things like that. It's taking like 20 minutes. So I'm like so happy about this. But anyways, the first thing you can do, by far, is fix your external presence. That's where your largest risk factor is in your entire company. Don't even worry about insider threat. Don't even worry about DLP. Don't even worry about any of the other stuff that we're taught to worry about right now. Focus your efforts on that only. That's it. You might say, well, oh my gosh, that's not what I'm told to do. I have to worry about this, and I have to worry about this, and I have to worry about patches, and I have to worry about this. Fix this first, because that's your likeliest area to be breached at as an organization, period. Second is fix your user population. The two most effective ways for attacking an organization is through your external perimeter or through attacking your user population. So work on them and protecting them. Third, start working on sensitive data. Start protecting that data that you start to consider out there. And at the same time, while you're doing all of this, educate your entire company as you're doing it. Education is key in every organization to start to change the company to a security-driven culture. Half the stuff that we pull, we would never get away with if our company wasn't security conscious. We pull a lot of stuff. It's fun. So your external presence baseline. Identify all, this is simple check method stuff. I went back to the basics for this. I'm not talking about a latest and greatest 0 day. These are checklist things that we should be doing fundamentally as a company or as an industry. Identify all of your externally facing assets. Does anybody here know what their externally facing assets are? Their IP addresses, their ranges, what they're running, an inventory of those? Have we done the work to actually do that? Probably not. Identify legacy or outdated systems and start working on how to get them not to be legacy or outdated, which is usually said and done, right? Identify all the necessary ports and protocols that you use. Simple stuff, right? Stuff that we should say, hey, this is our baseline template. This is our external presence as we know it. We don't need the rest of this stuff. Develop a baseline of what's acceptable, and perform thorough analysis of your external presence. And I'll talk about penetration testing in a few minutes because that's an important one. Here's a sample lockdown. Remove the ability for servers to contact the internet. A no-brainer, right? Simple stuff. Stuff that when a machine becomes compromised, it doesn't have the ability to contact out and beacon out to the internet. Simple stuff. place monitoring capabilities in place. This is the one time I'll actually recommend a product for you, a SIM, right? You all hear it, but no one implements it. We have all this stuff that aggregates all of our data to this fancy thing that we spent like $500,000 on or $1 million on, and it just logs all of our data and no one monitors it. Building some sort of intelligence in place to say, listen, if my external presence gets hacked and something weird's going on, I want to know about it. It takes a lot, and not a lot of companies are at that point yet. Developing a solid architecture with multiple layers of defense, multi-tier DMZs, again, things that we're accustomed to, but we don't do. Incorporating patch management. Here's a simple defending web applications, and this is another time I'll recommend a product. Listen, if you have no idea what any of your applications are doing and you have no security around them whatsoever, invest at least in a quick stopgap in like a web application firewall. You can get some really cheap ones for like $5 grand or for free. Like mod security is free. And so say you have this type of architecture where you have some load balancers, right? Maybe like an F5 or something like that. Put a couple web application firewall servers in place, you throw them in monitor mode for a little bit and monitor what type of things that are getting blocked. And then you place it behind your web applications, and all of a sudden you're getting full coverage from web application firewalls. Now you can tie into your SIM and you can start alerting real time on it. Simple stuff. This architecture right here, if you do it right, it take a maximum of like 3 months, max, to be able to do. And the type of security you get for it is exponential. Is it going to make you bulletproof? Heck no. But it's going to sure greatly enhance it. One of the things I hear a lot of times too is well, we don't really need that level of security in our company. Well, here's Diebold's. How many times we get attacked at Diebold, right? This is a week. So we get, on average, 3,762 attacks. And we actually took this during the NHL finals. You notice there's not one attack coming from Canada? Not one. Not one. And we didn't make this in any way, shape, or form. Those guys love their hockey. Love it.
Oh, they love proxies.
Oh, love proxies, sure. I'm pretty sure it's the earlier of the two with hockey, but I mean, there's not one attack coming from Canada, which is pretty crazy. Just as an example of response and what web application firewalls actually helped us with. This was February 22nd of this year. We started getting notifications that at 2:38, an attacker tried to breach some security mechanisms on Diebold.com. So they started hacking Diebold.com. And we have very good understanding of Diebold.com. We've done source code reviews, and we have application firewalls. We have it all tying into our SIM. And so we're very confident, right, in our presence. And so at 2:42, the attacker was automatically locked. So it was no longer able to communicate to any systems at Diebold. And what was interesting about it was he was literally like 20 minutes down the road from us. We triangulated back to a local coffee shop in Seven Hills, Ohio. So like all of us run into this car. We've been crammed in, we're screaming down the highway trying to catch this guy. Right? We have no idea what we're doing when we get there. It's like, that's the guy. And then walk away. But we have no idea what we're doing when we get there to see this person. But all we know is that we want to go after him and see what we can find out. Now, unfortunately, by the time we got there, he had left because we had automatically blocked him. We could tell by how he's communicating with our user, with his user ID string, that he was using probably a MacBook Pro, and that we had a pretty good idea of where he was at. And so we were able to pull the surveillance feeds from the local coffee shop. They were able to give us those. We gave them to the cyber warfare team, and they were able to locate him and go and knock on his door. And it turned out being a kid in high school, so we scared the living daylights out of him, which is awesome. So that's what we like to do. Terrorize teenagers. But that's just an example of something that was easy that we should have caught, right? But could have been something severe. We caught a very early stage of an attacker trying to penetrate our systems, right? Very easy stage. This type of stuff we're talking about is quick. Like you can make really quick wins very fast with this type of architecture, like 3 months max. Focus heavily on identifying what your external presence is. Within 3 months, you can have a pretty solid understanding of what that is. Technical controls. Sorry, I forgot this one. So technical controls that you can put in your user population. There we go. That's what I was going for. So I said the two most attacked vectors right now are social engineering, right, and your user population and your external presence. Putting simple things in place that restrict your users without them knowing about it is absolutely beneficial. At Diebold, if you compromise a internal machine, like say for example, someone browses a site that they shouldn't have, and they actually compromise that machine and now it tries to beacon out to the internet, they don't have a route out to the internet, period. They can't go over FTP, they can't go over DNS, they can't go over ICMP, they can't go over HTTP, they can't go over HTTPS. Can't go over any of them. So architecture we've set up to remove that element of attackers being able to effectively communicate out, and it's possible to do it right. Remove unnecessary permissions, Develop standard build images for all of your users so you have consistency across the board. Again, simple things that we're taught to do, right? Here's just a really quick architecture. Identify what your businesses use to communicate regularly, block the rest. That right there is going to eliminate a lot of exposure that you have for communication going outbound. Simple things like FTP. Did you know there's a Cisco command that's called FTP strict enforce? I think that's what it is, FTP strict? Is that what it was? And there's FTP strict RFC. Just by putting FTP strict RFC in place, it allows all FTP communications to run normally, but it actually inspects that traffic to make sure that it's legitimately the RFC spec of FTP. So if anything illegitimate is going over that port, like say command shell or trying to exfiltrate data, it doesn't work. Simple things that you can put in place that doesn't break anything day one. Sensitive information. Again, this is another simple one. You're not going to be able to classify every single piece of sensitive data in your organization. Does anybody here have DLP? It's not a trick question. I'm not going to make fun of you. Anybody here have DLP? No one? Does anybody here effectively use DLP? Is it hard for me to exfiltrate data out of the company? No, right? There's no way to do it. There's no way that you can say, okay, I'm going to put Vontu in, or I'm going to put McAfee in, or I'm going to put this solution in, and we're going to classify some things, and we're not going to allow them to send them through email. Okay? Well, when you put a USB stick in and you copy it off, or you send it through a personal Gmail account, or if you can stop that, you know, hey, I'm taking pictures, or hey, I have my entire laptop with me that I carry with me all the time, and I take all the data off anyway. And there's no way to say, hey, DLP-wise, I'm going to stop it from leaving the company. What you can do is start to put controls over things that really are sensitive to your company, things that make your company money. Because security, our only purpose in life, is to ensure that our company can continue to generate revenue. That is our only point of existence in security. If our company can't generate revenue, then it's not doing business. If our security controls are too much, that the company is losing money because of it, then we're not going to be there. Security's only purpose is to ensure that the risk is reduced and that the company can continue to generate revenue. That is it. And so look at how your company makes revenue. I can say that I know how 89% or 90% of Diebold makes money. I can say I know exactly where that money comes from. Can you do that in security? Do you know what your mission statement is for your company? Are you aligned with that to be able to say, listen, I understand where you guys are going, I understand what you want to protect, and here's how I'm going to do it. And now you start putting controls over, financial control systems, okay? Because your company is heavily regulated in that space. Or your prototype for your next generation of your next product line, I want to protect, because I don't want that to get out to the public, because it can definitely hurt us 10 years down the road. Getting an understanding of what's most important and starting to protect that only is what I would recommend. Don't try to boil the ocean. Education awareness. That is by far the most critical thing ever. People need to be dedicated in your company for just doing education awareness to your associates or employees. They have to. Campaigns around giving them awareness. We were talking about the whole anonymous Cebu and LulzSec thing of how these have been around forever and all that good stuff. Man, I'll tell you, I've gotten more people interested in security because of that than I ever have. Those guys have helped me more than anybody, ever. Right? Because everybody's terrified. Are we going to be next? Are we going to be next? What are we doing? What are we doing? Are we stopping SQL injection? We know everybody's freaking out. But it's great for us because we can use that as a good tapered way to say, listen, this is what we're doing. And here's an education of what we're actually protecting against. And so educating your users. We just had what we call our annual education awareness week. We do them in different countries. We go to China. We go to Brazil. I have them here. We had Kevin Mitney come talk to our associates and just do kind of a fun social engineering thing, right? We had a few other folks to come in and teach our associates, just to give them that fun factor of what's actually going on in the security community. So that type of program is so insanely important to identifying what exposures you have out there that I can't even express anything else. Okay, so we talked a little bit about doing all this, right? You've hardened your external perimeter. You've actually invested. You've actually done hard work. We've actually sat there and we lifted some hay. Obviously not physically, because I'd be a lot better shape if I did things physical. But looking at what we actually did was hard work. Right? We didn't just go buy products and start slapping a bunch of stuff, and we actually did hard work and started investing. Now, a lot of people say, well, the first thing that you need to do is a risk assessment. Has everybody heard that? Right? We need to do a risk assessment to find out how you're doing your security program. Throw those things away. Throw them away. Take that piece of paper and burn it. Use it as firewood or a starter for your firewood. Because those risk assessments do absolutely no good. None for what you just built. Because you have no idea what your exposures are. Your risk assessment is going to tell you nothing. penetration test, on the other hand, can actually validate what you've done. That's the thing that starts to flip my mind a bit on the security industry, which is how are we trying to solve technology with interviews? How can we solve technology and security problems with interviews? With looking at MSV documents, hardening documents, with looking at our patch management program, our policies. Those don't even matter when it comes to fixing technology. I mean, we have to have them, no question about it, but does it actually fix our problems? No, people actually fix the problems. Technology fixes the problems, right? Things that we actually do to protect those systems fix it. And we don't know what those are until we validate it. Has anybody here had a penetration test done before? Anybody? Few? Anybody perform a penetration test? I mean, yeah. So penetration tests are common. They're commodity, right? PCI DSS requires us to have a penetration test. Does anybody know what PCI DSS says around the assessor, who they have to be in order to do a penetration test? The skill set that they need, the requirements, how they're going to do it, the methodology around it. Does anybody know what that says about it?
Probably nothing.
You have to have a penetration test done by a reputable company is what it says. So hey, you need to go and get a reputable company to do a penetration test. That's what we do. So who here has a penetration test? Great. Let me ask another question. How long has your reports been for a penetration test? Anybody say? I mean, how long? When you get a penetration test report back from somebody, how long is it typically, like pages wise?
Which version? Are we doing the technical one?
The technical one, but take them both combined.
Just take it with our report.
Sure.
We'll start out with 20,000. We only probably report about 10.
10,000?
No, 10.
10? Okay.
Top 10.
Okay. It's 10,000 on page.
No, nobody reads it anyway.
Well, right, exactly.
Yeah.
So we look at the top 10, that's going to affect our bottom line.
Sure.
And put those forward.
Right. Anybody else got a list of how long their reports have been typically? Binders, 2-3 binders, right? So 300-400 pages I hear is pretty much accurate and average. Has anybody ever read through all of those? I've had one person that said yes in one of my other presentations, and that guy, I couldn't believe it. I wanted evidence.
I read the ones I wrote.
What's that?
I read the ones I wrote.
You won the rest.
I pasted a lot, so.
Copy and paste.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even read the ones I wrote
It's
sometimes.
a lot of finding the place.
Right.
Company names, like it all.
So our reports we get are 300 or 400 pages, and they do us literally no good because we're not going to read through all those. We don't care that we have SSLv2, right? We don't care that a certain thing happened. We have no idea what that really even means, to be honest with you. That you got domain admin through MSO 8067, and that you hacked into a bunch of stuff, and you had root and all that stuff. We don't care about that. Like us guys that actually like secure corporations, we don't know what any of that means, right? I'm not saying I don't, but I'm saying in general, corporations don't know what that means. I had to put a caveat in there. I'm not getting soft yet, okay? So I went around the room and talked about what a penetration test is. And what we saw, and this is what I want to talk a little bit about, what's called the penetration testing execution standard, which what we saw in the industry is a commodity service. We saw people that were going in and saying, hey, we can do penetration tests, and they take a vulnerability scanner, right? And they slap it across your network, and then they run some exploits that they think might be there, and then they give you this report. And they say, hey, here's your 600 pages of vulnerabilities that we think are there, or maybe we manually validate or whatever, and here you go. Good luck, right? And that's what we get. And so if you look at what penetration tests were actually designed to do, it's not that at all. And a lot of times I love this field because a lot of times, they'll sell a pen test for like $2,000. Does anybody know what happens when you go with the lowest bidder in consulting? I came from consulting. Does anybody know what happens?
You just get a scan report.
You get the scan report. You get something automated that someone, from right out of college, and no offense to right out of college, I mean, it's just, experience-wise, you have a lot to learn when it comes to penetration testing. You may be better than me. My son is wreaking havoc on the iPad already. But, you get these reports that are templatized, they have no value to your organization, and they're really just a cookie-cutter type thing that are given to you to say, hey, good luck with figuring out what all this means, and have a good day. And then we sit back and we say, okay, well, that looks important, I'm going to try to fix that, and that looks important, I'm going to try to fix this, and we'll fix this one, but I don't really know what this one means, so we're just going to kind of ignore that. And our executive summary says that we're okay here, so we're not going to focus on that, right? That's how we do it. We try to interpret our reports. And so a bunch of us got together 2 years ago. So 2 years ago, I think, at ShmooCon. Was it 2? Yeah, 2. 2 years ago at ShmooCon, and it was a bunch of hackers all over the world. We came together and we united, and we said, listen, we want to actually define what a penetration test is. We don't want to say, hey, a reputable company can do a penetration test. What does that even mean, right? And so we wanted to say, listen, this is what we define as being thought leaders in the industry, and saying, listen, this is what penetration testing is, and this is what it's designed to do, and this is what we're going to do with it. And I'll tell you what that is in a second. But our overall purpose was to fix security. The only way that you can validate if security vulnerabilities are not there, or security exposure not there, is through actually technically testing it. You have to test if it's there, right? It's the only way you can test it, unless someone comes with a product that I didn't know about, that can magically test it. But that's the only way. And if you look at that as a foundation for security programs versus a risk assessment, or versus what we're taught, it can actually start to be a framework that we use every single day to start to secure organizations. And so P-test defines a penetration test as the ability to identify exposures within an organization that represents a true breach simulation and the ability to hinder the company's ability to generate revenue. So how can I go into a company and hinder their ability to generate revenue? Is that brand reputational damage? Is that going in and stealing trade secrets? Is that going into the financial systems and transferring $10 million out? What's the best way for me to impact that company and hurt them in every way, shape, or form I can? And why that's important is because that's all people care about. That's all we're supposed to do in security. They're supposed to protect the company, right? And so it's a baseline analysis of how our overall security program is doing. And what I want to explain with this is, and this is the most important part if you can take out of this presentation, this is the most important part of it all. If you take a penetration test and you do it right, what you should have is a foundation of where your deficient security programs are in your company and what isn't working. So we have MSBs, we have security injected into the software development license, we have web application firewalls, we have intrusion prevention, we have programs that are designed to withstand these attacks. However, we noticed systemic flaws in some of those. Okay, say we get in through SQL injection, right? 12-year-old vulnerability. We get in through a SQL injection vulnerability. Obviously, there was a problem there where that exposure didn't get hit and didn't get found. So how do we do a root cause analysis of that and say, listen, here's where the actual problem was at, and here's how we're going to address it to make sure that that doesn't happen in the future. Because when we get these penetration test reports, these books, right? We get this book of all of our vulnerabilities. We sit there for 6 months remediating. And guess what happens 6 months later?
Get a new book.
They get a new book. They're all right back again. Never fix the root cause of the problem. And so if I take a penetration test and I say, listen, I systemically found these issues here and I see problems across the board in these different areas, you start to dive down into the specifics, you start to actually fix your security program from the ground up versus tactically fixing it. And that's what penetration tests were designed to do. And that's what P-test is designed to do. So welcome to P-test. It was to really clear up any question that we had of what a penetration test is. I'll tell you right now, as a Fortune 1000 company, we will not go with an assessor that doesn't use this framework, period. And I know a lot of other companies there. When we first started P-test, there were, I think, 11 of us that started it. Guess how many are now? They're actively contributing to P-test. 1,300 contributing right now to P-test. Completely open. We all have different perspectives. We all have different things that's coming in. Guys that are consultants that see this every day. Guys that are on the audit side that know how to audit. Guys that are on the legal side. Guys that are like me on the corporate side. We all come together and say, listen, these are ways that we can improve it. From a reporting perspective, this is how I want to see reports. Because this is how it benefits me as an organization. You know, hey, as an assessor, here's what I need to know from you, the business, and that you should already have available so that I can do this type of work. So an active collaboration of saying, listen, this is how we're supposed to do it. What's kind of neat, that's not supposed to be there. What's kind of neat is it breaks it down into a very methodical and repeatable process. So it says, listen, these are the steps that we're going to take during a penetration test, and it's not like you have to follow each one of these to the T, because we're not trying to box the penetration test in and keep it limited of what you can do. This is very much unique to every single company. Pre-engagement interaction, understanding how the company works, what their main drivers are. You know what? Maybe the company, all they care about is PCI. So you do that 5 grand assessment because they're not going to change their ways. But hopefully during that process, when you communicate to them, you can start to show them things that they didn't know about, right? But understanding their culture, understanding what their drivers are, and really trying to hit that. Intelligence gathering, understanding how the company does business, their subsidiaries, you know, anything I can do from OSINT, open source intelligence, learning about how they actually operate, where my best avenue for attack is, threat modeling, understanding what way I want to get into the company, my attack vector, the most effective, impactful type of attack that I can go against the company. You know, can I break into a car dealership and change their manufacturing line to start producing competitor cars, right? Or can I go into a healthcare provider and have it start spitting out a bunch of pharmaceuticals and drugs? You know, what way can I impact and can I kill patients, okay? My favorite is not, it's not favorite, I mean, it's scary. But my favorite is going to a hospital and, you know, changing the temperature on the ER table and having someone die. I mean, I've simulated, obviously, you're just out there. Or breaking into those dispensers. You see those dispensers? They have like, they're like these R2D2 looking things, and they put their thumbprint on it, and they type in a couple things, and they load a prescription in and it shoots out the drugs. Those things are awesome from a security perspective. You can spit out any drug you want to, and a whole bunch of it. Like, we had a big bucket of just like pharmaceutical drugs just raining into this, and we're like walking out of this building like this big bucket of pharmaceuticals. Awesome. They got it back, obviously.
Most of
I
it.
think most of it. So, like, I don't know. This is everything that it had in it, we just unloaded. Vulnerability analysis, actually starting to probe the infrastructure, looking for what exposures are out there, seeing where you may have preventative measures in place, right? Hey, they have a WAF. Well, what kind of WAF is it and how can I bypass it? Or hey, there's a vulnerability here, but there's some preconditions that I need to do in order to do it. Researching what you're going to do to the company and how you're actually going to attack it. Understanding it. The smallest phase of them all, which is the largest for most, is exploitation. That's the tiniest phase of this entire thing. You hit one target and you say, hey, I just broke in with this one specific vulnerability, got in, and now I have full access to start doing my post-exploitation phase. Very precise hit, precision, get in, good, right? Now again, it's not just, you only actively look for that, you're looking for multiple systemic issues to continue to progress on. But again, very small part of the phase. Am I moving around too much for you? I'll move around more. Post-exploitation.
How about I just duct tape the camera to you?
I'll just hold it. Post-exploitation is learning the network, learning the infrastructure, learning the company. You should know that company better than they know their company themselves. Understanding how things communicate, where the sensitive data resides at, how they do business. Really starting to impact them, going after it. Going into a casino and having the slot machine start raining cash everywhere. It's awesome, we've done it, it's cool. You know, getting into a hospital and being able to exfiltrate all their PHI data, right? Because it's all HIPAA regulated, great, right? From there, the reporting phase, which is the #1 most important part of that entire penetration test. How do you communicate that message to the person to say, listen, this is what we're able to do and has nothing to do with domain admin. This is what we're able to do. Here's your technical stuff, which are still important to fix, but here's really where your foundational issues are at. This is the crack in your armor. This is the wall that you forgot to put up. And here's how you start to fix it. What's nice about P-Test is it doesn't expect you to be awesome day one. There's different levels. So you may be very immature. You say, hey, I'm down here, or we identify you're down here, and you need to get to, say, 3. Okay, maybe you're not a 4, you don't want to be Fort Knox, you don't want to go to a 4 and do 0-day stuff, right? So my level of assurance and what I'm able to invest is a 2 or a 3. And security isn't expensive, to be honest with you. I mean, building these programs, investing in people is not expensive. You get expensive when you start buying these $10 million freaking DLP solutions and web application firewalls and everything else that we do out there. It's like, that's when it starts getting expensive. And so you say, okay, I'm a level 1. Here's what I need to do to get to a level 2, and start checking that and actually putting metrics to what you're doing to try to protect against those type of attacks. It's definitely a phased approach. You're not going to be the best day one, but it's actually tangible. All right, so I talked about penetration testing, execution standard, and by the way, you can get to that standard. It's up available. It's at pentest, P-E-N-T-E-S-T, -standard.org. So if you're interested. So let's put this all together real quick and kind of go over it, and then we'll get out of here because it's like almost 4. Boot out the vendors right now. Take those vendors and kick them out. Don't do anything. Don't buy any shiny box. Don't go golfing with them. Don't go to dinner with them. Don't go to lunch with them. Don't let them smooze you to buying the next thing or feeling committed to them to buy something. Boot them out right now. Kick them for the next 3 to 6 months. Don't buy one freaking product. Leave it alone. Actually do some hard work to understand what you're doing. Do some hard work to investigate what's really out there. Stop everything you're doing and find out what your exposures are and start focusing on what your riskiest factors are. Do that first, but then anything else. Focus on protecting the majority. By that I mean, focus on things that you can do in your company to impact the rest of the company. Let's say that your external presence, very easy win. Very easy. Your user population, very easy win. I hate the shirt. What is it? The shirt that bothers me all the time is this human stupidity. There's no patch for human stupidity. That shirt bothers me. I'll never wear that shirt ever. And the reason why that shirt bothers me is because it's not the employee's job to understand security or what they're clicking on. They have no idea. Do you know how to make your next next gen product and start like building things in a manufacturing plant? I have no idea. It's not my job to. Do I know how to do HR? I might kinda. I probably violate it all the time. But, do you know how to do sales? Maybe. Do you know how to do legal? Are you a specialist in law? Do you have any idea what it is to go to court and testify under law? I have no idea what any of that is, and nor should your employees. It's not their job to understand security. But what you can do is start to teach them a little bit. Say, listen, these are things that you can see that are quick and easy to spot, and really rely off of them for simple things. It's not their job to understand what a exploit is, what a SQL injection vulnerability is, what a whatever it is, hips and all this other stuff. They don't understand that, nor should they ever. It's not their job to. My biggest complaint, I guess, right now in the industry is investing in people. You have to build your people up inside before you ever buy technology. Investing in actually training people, investing in actually proactively going after talent to protect your organizations. That's where the true value is going to come in your company. It's not going to be from a shiny piece of technology. Continuously test, that's a given now, right? Penetration testing. Very easy way to validate how you're doing. Compliance. Compliance to me does not equal security in any facet whatsoever, at all. It's not even a baseline to me. And the reason I say that is, okay, let's just take one of the more technical standards, and then we'll throw in something on top of it. We'll take PCI DSS, the Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard. PCI DSS was the most technical standard that came out in its time, right? It said, hey, you have to do these certain things of criteria in order to meet our needs. That, to me, means that companies think that that's the way that they have to invest in their security program. It actually does a disservice to them because they think that, hey, now that we're PCI DSS compliant, or now that we've invested this into compliance, we now have a foundation for security, which it's conversely the opposite. Heavily the opposite. People get into this malicious cycle where, hey, this is our PCI zone. You can only hack this little area right here, right? What about these 500 other systems that communicate in with it? Is a hacker going to say, whoa, that's out of scope, guys, I'm sorry. Hey, almost violated scope there, right? It creates a situation where some of our data that, unless we're in a heavily retail type environment where credit cards are the #1 king in our business, which isn't a lot of us, that really has no impact on our business whatsoever. I mean, reputationally it might, but who cares, right? You look at TJ Maxx, they're doing great right now. They're doing awesome. Better than they were when they hit the breach. Who cares about that stuff? What I would care about is like, hey, a competitor to TJ Maxx, right? They know that we're going to start releasing prices that are going to be this, and they're going to competitively go after those. So we start losing money that way. Or what our next campaign is going to be for marketing. We're going to combat that with some other marketing. Things that can actually impact the business long term and start to hurt the brand and not be a credit card loss. Who cares about credit card loss? I mean, obviously you care, but I mean, don't rely off of that as your framework. Compliance does not equal security in any capacity. ISO 27002, 27001, TR39, SSA 16. They do you no good. You have to do them, but don't use it as your foundation for your security program because it's not. Now what you can do, and this is often effective, is use PCI as a backbone to start building your security program. We're going to build security from the ground up, and guess what? PCI is going to fall in line now. HIPAA is going to fall in line right now. High tech is going to fall in line right now, right? All this stuff that we have to do as a company is going to start to fall in line right now because we're actually building security from the ground up. It actually kind of works. So don't rely on that stuff. That's all I got. Anybody have any questions for me?
When can we expect the next updates?
I did one today.
It's daily now, right?
I just did one today. Next version of set 3.4 will be at DEF CON. And by the way, go to our DEF CON talk. It's going to be pretty insane.
That's a while, dude. DEF CON?
It's 2 months away. I mean, I'll have intermittent versions like 3.3.2, 3.3.3, but 3.4 will be in July. We're going to release a bunch of new code, and we're actually doing a really cool attack that really hasn't been done before, and it's going to be really cool. It's going to be really neat, to say the least. Oh, check out B-Sides Cleveland. Free. It's in Cleveland, Ohio. It's about 4.5 hours from here or so. There's going to be a lot of great speakers there as well. It's free booze and food and all that good stuff. Lockpicks come as part of the thing you get inside, so it's going to be a great conference for everybody there. A lot of great speakers that we haven't announced yet. DerbyCon, September 27th through the 30th, Louisville, Kentucky. Awesome conference. I'm saying that because I helped start it and everything. Anybody else have any questions? If I can leave you with anything, it's just think about how you're structuring your programs. Don't be reactive security. Really start to understand where your exposures are and start building your security program off of that. Because if you get into a mentality where you're trying to fix everything, it's going to be overwhelming and not going to be able to do it. You can easily secure a company with 3 people. You can easily secure a company with 50 people. It's not an excuse anymore to say we don't have the funding to do it. A lot of these things you can do without having to have the funding. You just got to cut all that red tape out of the water. You can't sit there for 6 months trying to fix a high vulnerability. It doesn't work. It's not going to protect your company. We put so much red tape around everything we do. So validate what you have out there. Make sure it's working. If it's not, fix it. And fix it strategically, the root cause. Well, thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Have a good one.